Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle Me. In my series Freemasonry and Satanism, this is a new book review, number 282. Moving on up, closing in on 300 books, authors reviewed. Today's book, The Fearful Master, a second look at the United Nations. G. Edward Griffin. This is a hard-hitting, carefully documented book and a healthy antidote to the United Nations can do no wrong propaganda, the New York Daily News. So look at that picture of the map of the world. It's kind of interesting. It's like a flat Earth map. And then the reefs around the sides. And the divisions, almost like a sniper's rifle focus aiming device. The Fearful Masters, a second look at the United Nations. G. Edward Griffin. Years ago, I made a book review or one from this book by G. Edward Griffin, The Creature from Jekyll Island. So to me, understanding history is everything. A second look at the Federal Reserve. So the short history of it is, around the time of the Civil War in the United States with Abraham Lincoln, the elite from Britain and other elite banksters in Germany and other parts of the world lost control of controlling the USA money supply. So that would be around 1860, 1863. So for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years, these elite people from the banksters from Britain, the financial district, and other places in the world, teaming up with even entities out of the Vatican and out of Germany, were trying to regain control of America's money supply. And a couple presidents were there was attempted assassination on their lives by poisoning, etc. And then 6 months prior to World War I, when before that, I forget the president's name before Woodrow Wilson, but that president and senators and congressmen for the previous 50, 60 years would not allow these elite banksters from Britain, etc., the world, take control of the USA money supply. So the Illuminati and some elite Jewish people, Zionists, told that president, the one before Woodrow Wilson, well, we'll put our man in charge and we will get what we want. And they succeeded in getting Woodrow Wilson elected. And a few months later, the Federal Reserve was created at Jekyll Island, involving Senator Hyde. Isn't that interesting? Jekyll and Hyde. You ever seen the Looney Tunes cartoon, Jekyll and Hyde? So there's a lot to this stuff, and they kind of mock we the people. They took over the USA money supply that enabled them to accomplish World War I. After World War I, there was a Great Depression in the United States and preparations for World War II, and Great Depressions all over the world, making World War II more likely, just like the situations that are going on right now on April 6th, the year 2020, with the whole world on shutdown. So economically things are collapsing. So how do you think that's going to work with China and Russia and Africa and all those countries in Europe and the Middle East, Australia, United States, Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, Canada. The tensions will rise, obviously. And prior to World War I and World War II, there was economic suffering, and the stress and the retaliation and the efforts to take control of the world against the perceived enemy brought us World War I, World War II, and planning brought us 9/11 and other wars, so that they could destroy all those countries in the Middle East. So could this economic stressful situation all over the world bring us World War III? And the elite who control the USA money supply have literally taken trillions upon untold trillions from the United States. Can you imagine how we would all live if they had not taken trillions and trillions and brought us into World War I and World War II? And so the United States, the political puppets were put in power that these elites could control. The financial banksters, the Zionists, involving a lot of elite Jewish people, and a lot of Jewish people, good Jewish people, who were not agreeing with this activity. They tried to warn us, like Benjamin Friedman. If you doubt anything I'm saying, go watch some of my videos on all those hundreds of books I reviewed, or go look up Benjamin Friedman's famous video on YouTube. Go look up President John Kennedy's famous video on YouTube. Just use those words. Benjamin Friedman's speech at the Waldorf Hotel in New York, his famous speech, and John Kennedy's famous speech, where he said, "Secret societies are repugnant to the American way of life, and I intend to expose them." And 7 or 8 days later, they blew the back of his head off, etc., etc., etc. So they took over the USA money supply, and G. Edward Griffin wrote this big, thick book. I made a book review on it, probably in 2014. And I'm continuing to do my research, even in the midst of this situation that we're all in. And I have received numerous emails saying, "Rick, how does it feel that you were right?" And it's not a fact about me being right. I always hoped that I would look like the fool and be wrong. I never wanted to be right. But I could see the handwriting on the wall, and I could look up at the sky and see them dumping chemicals, biologicals, radioactivity, materials. We don't know. They don't tell us. We don't have a need to know, apparently. So I continue to do research. I continue to watch videos. I continue to find books. And this book here is an excellent book, and I couldn't afford it. It was too expensive. So I went on archive.com or .org, archive.org, I think, and put in G. Edward Griffin, and I found the PDF of the book. And what I do is I download it, and I read the book, and it's just a few dollars for me to print it out on my Epson printer, the Envy Epson printer, that uses these cartridgeless system where you just buy these tanks of ink, and you can print out about 4,000 pages. So if you got a 200-page book, how many pages is this book? Probably 200. So what I want to read in this book, a second look at the United Nations, I just want to point out that the people in charge of the world are operating also out of the United Nations. There's plenty of evidence that it is an atheist organization, a communist organization, even a satanic organization. UNESCO, the United Nations Science and Education Department, a couple years ago, sponsored a program to put the Archway of Baal, B-A-A-L, Archway of Baal, in New York and London. And later on I found out that UNESCO, the United Nations Education and Science Department were putting out 1,000 of these archways all over the world to Baal, B-A-A-L, and Baal, B-A-A-L, is a demon. If you go on Yahoo image site and look up B-A-A-L, Baal, B-A-A-L, you will see the demon. And the archway is a doorway, which is a portal. And it has all kinds of inscriptions on it, like magic symbols. So apparently you have these archways with magic symbols, and you can communicate with the demon through the portal. This is not so far-fetched if you understand reality. And like I said, you can go back and watch any of the hundreds and hundreds of videos I made and many other people have made, and find out that it's becoming clearer and clearer that this is a Luciferic, satanic cult that rules the world, and the Zionists, who are predominantly of the Kabbalah type cult. And Kabbalah, you can find books on Kabbalah magic and Kabbalah witchcraft. So the people who control our world are into demonic fallen angel worship, whether it's Moloch or Baal and many other names. And even on the dollar bill, where my finger is here, sorry, the opposite side, on top of that one, you can look at your own dollar bill. Focus. Sorry about that. But you can see a little owl perched on that one. There you go. See the little owl? Right above my finger. Okay, come on, focus. Right above my finger, there's a little tiny owl. Moloch. We go to the Bohemian Grove, where a lot of our elite leaders have been photographed, including presidents and Nixon and others. You will see a giant owl, and they have a big fire in the owl, and they throw a baby in the fire called the cremation of care. The men only wear long robes naked, and apparently, according to the stories that I've read, they ship in gay men for some kind of homosexual satanic ritual. You can't make this up. They throw a baby in the fire. Cremation of care. You can't make this up. The United Nations, UNESCO, is putting the Archway of Baal in London, New York, and 1,000 other cities, and paying for it. Baal, a demon, a devil, and apparently they got pictures of Baal on Yahoo image site holding out his hands, or even stuffing a child in his mouth, eating it. So, and I can go on and on and on about the symbols. It's on the dollar bill. The all-seeing eye, New World Order, mission complete. And even on G. Edward Griffin's other book is the symbol with the eagle and the 13 stars and the 13 stripes and the 13 feathers and the 13 arrows and the 13 leaves. So 13, of course, is a witchcraft number. 13 witches to a coven, etc., etc. So G. Edward Griffin is a well-known author, smarter man than me, and he investigated the United Nations and tells all the things that I talk about. And he investigates the United Nations and tells all the secrets about that. So let me read from the book here. This is how I do these videos. I like to read a short portion of the book and break it up with a little bit of my thoughts, realizing that who is controlling the world are the people behind the total world shutdown. A total world shutdown for influenza, a flu, where more people have died in previous years in any one year than are dying in this episode of the influenza. And the COVID virus, coronavirus, is a common virus that's existed for years and years. There are a couple others, but this one was called COVID-19 because apparently this particular virus erupted in China in 2019. So they've had it before. They've had even more detrimental biological viruses out there killing people. SARS, Ebola, and Spanish flu, and many others. There's a lot of anomalies with the storyline from the powers that be, the media. And again, we see the results of shutting down the whole world and businesses in Australia over here, and Mexico, and United States, and Canada, and Europe, and China, and Russia, and the whole world. So most of people are aware that a lot of people economically are living week to week, month to month. We don't have a lot of reserves. So this situation of shutting down the world is obviously going to be a path of no return. And it is, in my opinion, orchestrated, planned, and controlled by people also in the United Nations that have an agenda. It's a communist agenda, it's an anti-Christian agenda, an atheist agenda, a satanic agenda. And they call themselves atheists, but they do satanic, demonic rituals. So it does exist, it is real, the symbols are everywhere, the things that they do are obvious. So let me read from the book, and maybe you'll believe me, and maybe you'll go on archive.org, I believe it is, and for free, download the PDF of E. Edward Griffin's book. Just look up archive.org, get to that website, plug in the search for G. Edward Griffin, The Fearful Master. You probably have to put his G. Edward Griffin in there. Find the PDF, download the PDF, and read the whole book yourself. But here we go. Let's take this back to 1955. 1955, Congressman Lawrence H. Smith, Wisconsin, describes the United Nations and UNESCO, the United Nations Education, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, as a permanent international snake pit where godless communism is given a daily forum for the hate, recrimination, psychological warfare against freedom, and the unrelenting moral aggression against peace. If instead of rereading that, it's so important, just back up your computer and listen to what I said again. Crazy. That same year, at its annual national convention in Miami, the American Legion formally passed the following resolution. You know who the American Legion is, right? These would be people who were in foreign wars and come back to the United States and have their little lodge, the American Legion. And so it's made up of some sincere people who fought in wars all over the world. And at their annual national convention in Miami, the American Legion formally passed the following resolution. So the American Legion resolved that the American Legion urges Congress to repeal the law creating the United States Commission for UNESCO, United Nations Education and Science Department, and its Secretariat, and that Congress deliver mandates to all administrative departments of the United States government to desist from further dissemination of UNESCO and U.S. Commission for UNESCO materials, reports, programs within the territorial jurisdiction of the United States. So apparently the American Legion is telling Congress, issuing a resolution, sending them a letter signed by all these war heroes to cease and desist disseminating the information materials coming out of the United Nations, UNESCO. Wow, that's pretty powerful. Back in 1955. As the true nature of UNESCO became better understood by more and more Americans, popular opposition began to rise against it. Patriotic organizations and service clubs all over the nation began to speak up and demand corrective action. To stem the tide, the State Department, so the people who are elected, our officials, when the Foreign Legion sent a letter to Congress to get rid of the United Nations connection and the materials they're publishing, communist, atheist, satanic materials, and you'll see that here when I read on. So to stem the tide, the State Department, so the people working in Capitol Hill, people working for the Senate, people working for the House of Representatives, issued a series of lengthy bulletins which asserted that a few people had been making some misstatements about UNESCO, and some of them attaining the proportions of deliberate misrepresentation. Many of these statements repeat irresponsible charges which were long ago shown to be groundless. You know, it's funny when you look back from the year 2020 today, you find out that the charges were not groundless. And a few days ago, the American Legion passed its resolution condemning UNESCO. President Truman told newspaper reporters the Legion doesn't know what it's talking about. So apparently the Legion wasn't associated with the satanic secret societies, the Zionist banking system, the bought and paid for politicians. So the President Truman says the Legion doesn't know what it's talking about. They have gone haywire in the last few years. They don't know what they are doing. So what do you think? The purpose of this charter is to examine some of the, the purpose of this chapter is to examine some of the groundless, irresponsible charges and misrepresentations that have led the American Legion, the Daughters of the American Revolution, and many other patriotic societies to go haywire against UNESCO. So let's find out what these crazy ideas, the Daughters of the American Revolution, the patriotic societies, the American Legion, what causes all these sincere, concerned citizens to go haywire against UNESCO? Frederick Engels wrote under the communism, Friedrich Engels wrote that under communism, so Friedrich Engels wrote that under communism, I repeat it for a reason, the youth of the world will grow up in a new free social conditions and will be in a position to cast away all this rubbish of statism. So I guess that would be cause people to go haywire, to be conspiracy theories, foolish people, just because Friedrich Engels says that under communism we'll be able to cast away all the rubbish of statism. So we won't be able to be proud of being from Maine or Florida or California, or proud to be an American citizen, or proud to be a Brazilian citizen, or proud to be a Mexican citizen, or proud to be a Canadian citizen, or proud to be German, or proud to be French, or proud to be British, or proud to be Spanish, or proud to be Chinese, or proud to be Indian, or proud to be Russian, Australian, New Zealand, anywhere in the world, Libya. This is intended for the whole world, for nobody to be proud of who and what they are. Statism. William Z. Foster amplified this by saying, the studies will be revolutionized. So they're going to revolutionize our schools, being cleansed of religious, patriotic, and other features of the Burgonese ideology. So the Burgonese society needs to go. So we homeowners, we business owners, we people who work at careers at auto manufacturers, people who have other careers at aerospace companies, working for huge department stores, and who have some money, maybe invest a little stocks. You know, people all over the world buying a lot or a house or whatever. Burgonese ideology must go. Religious, patriotic attitudes must go. I'm throwing my the stuff in there twice. The students will be taught on the basis of Marxism, dialectic materialism, internationalism, and the general ethics of the new socialist society. So they need to bring about the new socialist society. They need to bring the whole world down and do a reset. Have you heard those words lately? Reset, a new cash system, a new world religion, a global order. It's all part of this. The communism, atheism in disguise, which is actually Satanism, and the symbols are everywhere. I could make, and I have made, 100 videos on this satanic aspects of all this. And it's clearly identified in the Bible again and again, in the Old Testament, in the New Testament, in Revelation. I mean, it's overwhelming. And we are, believe it or not, to some of you out there, we are spiritual beings. We are on a trip, a visit to planet Earth when we're born into these bodies, and we die after 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 years, whatever. Some people live to be 100. Some people die at 2 years old or 10 years old. But we come into this reality and we leave. This is not the permanent reality. So it doesn't matter so much what happens to us, but how we react to what happens to us. The things we do and the thoughts we have are very important. We should not have hateful thoughts. No matter how much we are overwhelmed and stressed out, we have to pray for love of the world, this place that we're visiting. All right, so this guy, William Foster, next sentence says, our teachers must write new school textbooks and rewrite history. Next page. Marxism point of view. So this would be anti-God point of view. There will be no place for the present narrow patriotism, the bigoted national chauvinism that serves so well the capitalist war makers. And again, I find so much wrong with this. We the people, me and you, general citizen, are not war makers. We were all stunned after 9/11 and bought the government story that these people over here from Iraq and Afghanistan and all those other countries were the culprits. They were not. It is obvious if you look into the Engineers and Architects of America Association and all the work that they've done and so many other videos. 9/11 was an inside job, a false event, so they could do what they're doing. In my opinion, the whole shutdown of the whole world is a controlled event so that they can do what they're going to do next. And if they do what they're going to do next, there's going to be a huge depopulation of the planet. Now, there's several ways they can do it. One, in my city today, or in the country where I live, they're sky spraying something into the sky again. These long lines, and they unfold to be a big sheet of white pasty stuff in the sky. They could put something in that, and David Icke said it in his video. Max Egan said it in his video, and so many other people. Dane Wigington, Geoengineering Watch, said it in his video the other day. Deborah Travers. They could ramp it up to the next level and start spraying some biological weapon, and people would be dying everywhere, and they would probably believe that it's all from some kind of virus. Quite interesting. Shutting down the world, businesses going bankrupt, people not paying their rent. In the newspapers, on internet press releases, landlords are serving eviction notices, and they're being called out as evil, and the managers of those rental properties say, wait a minute, my boss said I have to collect the rent because we have a mortgage payment to pay, and if we don't pay it, the bank is going to take the buildings, foreclose on us, and the banks are not listening to us when we're asking for some help. And the banksters, of course, are the elite people that control our world. So it is a domino effect. It was predictable. The people who shut down the world knew this. They had to have discussed it. We know what they want from what I'm reading in this book. And so the coronavirus served as a good tool to expand the whole concept of it and do something to save us from killing ourselves. Everybody stays home, shuts down your businesses, don't pay your rent, and the government passed a stimulus program giving themselves $2 trillion, and apparently they're going to send all the people making under $70,000 a year $1,200, and I got out my calculator, and that's about 1.5 to 2 billion. So if they passed a stimulus program of 2 trillion, from subtract 2 billion, there's 1,000 billion in a trillion. So 2,000 billion minus 2 billion leaves them with 1,998 billion. And apparently, prior to this whole event, RT News, Rick Sanchez, Glenn Beck, and other people were reporting that the Federal Reserve was shuffling $500 billion to the banking system every night for 3 or 4 days, a couple trillion. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump in his campaign speeches was saying the economy was better than it has ever been in the history of America. And so I'm thinking, then why were they shuffling $500 billion a day prior to the corona outbreak and the shutting down the world? Apparently the system was going to collapse, so they're creating a controlled situation to bring about the desired result that I'm reading about in this book, The Fearful Master. Okay, back to the book. I appreciate you bearing with my thoughts on this. I'm trying to make it real clear. I'm not a fearmonger. I don't think there's any room for fear. As far as I'm concerned, when if we do get killed by this, if they started spraying toxins and poisons in the air today, or emitting some microwave energies that kills us all, those who believe in God and choose that path will wind up in heaven, which apparently is a much more beautiful place than earth could ever be. And a lot of people who have died and returned from the death or had out-of-body experiences, in the many, many, many books about those topics, say that when you return to the spiritual world, it's like when you die, you just like go to sleep for a second and wake back up in that other world, and it's just amazingly wonderful there. So to look forward to that is probably a realistic opinion. Although we are alive and consciously we're trying to stick to this life, but all of us have to leave eventually. Back to the book here, throwing in my 2 cents. There will be no place for the present narrow patriotism, the bigoted national chauvinism that serves so well the capitalist war makers. And again, like 911, we citizens are not the war makers. Most of us don't even think about capitalism. We go to work, we get paid, we pay our bills, we like to raise a family. People go to sports, football games, basketball games, birthday parties, etc. We're just trying to live a normal life. You would hardly call John or Mary or Tim or Paul or me, Rick, and everybody else a capitalist war maker. But the people who control our world are the capitalist war makers. So you have to read with a discerning eye and a discerning mind. You have to see through the lies in the prints. So this was a statement made by Earl Broder, or I should say, one of the people from the United Nations, using the word capitalist war makers. In 1936, speaking before the 9th National Convention of the Communist Party in the United States, 1936, that's just a couple years prior to World War II. They were publishing a book called Germany Must Perish prior to World War II about this time, calling for the death of every citizen with any German DNA, men, women, and children, by some Jewish elite people prior to World War II. Did you know that? And then prior to World War II, you can look this stuff up, there were press releases or advertisements taken out in major world newspapers saying that 6 million Jews in Europe were in danger prior to World War II, prior to the so-called Holocaust. The newspapers were saying 6 million Jews were in danger. You can go on Yahoo image site and type in 6 million Jews in danger, and you'll get all the pictures, and I've shown it in previous videos. So they were calling on the destruction of Germany prior to World War II, and that 6 million Jews were in danger prior to World War II. And of course, now after World War II, they said 6 million Jews were put into gas chambers and killed, and that doesn't appear to be the true story. Did any Jews die? Of course they did. A lot of people died in World War II. But apparently the biggest program, the Transfer Agreement, is another book, the Transfer Agreement. The Zionists and the banksters and the elites, Illuminati, were working to have a lot of Jews in the German area shipped to Palestine right here. So you can look up pictures called Aliyah, and that's a word calling for the return of all of the Jewish people to the Middle East, part of biblical prophecy called the return, Aliyah. So all this was going on in World War I and World War II, clearly for the last 100 years. And apparently Israel, sucking all the money out of the United States with all the Jewish political action groups, have taken trillions of our money and have purchased a lot of the companies around the world, and they are the advanced technical capital, a leading technological center of the world right now, controlling the whole world. And apparently saying things like that is probably what got me banned on YouTube. My 11 years worth of videos and published, shutting down my channel with no strikes against me. They can't give me any strikes because I'm not making anything up, and I'm certainly not promoting hate. I don't even tell people to hate the Satanists, the devils and the demons, because God told us to pray for everybody and everything and to not have fear during these events. We're just here like avatars in these biological bodies. And why? What's the purpose of it all? I don't know, but I believe God in his infinite wisdom in the spiritual realm, they know what they're doing, and I'm going to trust in that. And apparently the evil forces controls Earth. I believe that. And all I know is that we the people need to wake up and acknowledge what is going on. And I believe that is significant enough to save most people. accepting God and believing the evil is going on and speaking out against it. You can't take up guns and go shoot up the city hall or the National Guard or your neighbors for their food. You're just going to wind up on the wrong side of the elevator when you die. You're not going to go up, you're going to go down. Just saying. So in 1936, speaking before the 9th National Convention of the Communist Party in the United States, Earl Broder declared, "Who wins the youth wins the future of America." And they have been mind controlling our youth since World War II, actually about 20 years after that, the 60s, when we had the hippie age and they were importing drugs in America, even using the Vietnam War to introduce all of those crazy drugs and crazy attitudes and prevent people from raising large families because they were a little concerned about too many people on the planet about 10 to 20 years after World War II. And the truth is, for the last 100 or 200 years, countries all over the world were clearly concerned with unwanted people. That's what they consider overpopulation. Unwanted and unneeded people for these atheist, satanic elite. I mean, think about it. It costs money to have a dog or a cat, right? Well, what about these elite? They think we're animals, and it costs money to feed and house a human. So what's the best way to take care of that problem? Kill off the humans. And these elites think that the whole world will be theirs, and that there'll be a smaller number of humans that they can mentally control to be their slaves and entertainment and serve other decadent and perverted desires of theirs, as we've all seen with the Epstein situation and sex trafficking, child trafficking. It's quite horrible. It goes all the way back to Aleister Crowley, child sacrifice, child sexual abuse, child sexual satanic rituals. It's insane. It's very insane. Back to this book. In these 3 brief statements, the communists themselves have fully explained what UNESCO in America was designed to accomplish. So UNESCO from the United Nations wants to accomplish the following: achieve effective control of the education system of our country. Have they done that? The obvious answer is yes. If the communists can condition the minds of the youth of a nation for just one generation, that nation will be theirs within that generation. And a lot of people out there, you'd mention God, Jesus, I don't care if it's Islam, Buddhist, Hindu, people will laugh at you and say there's no God. They have been indoctrinated into the atheist philosophy through the school system and peer pressure and cartoons and movies and newspapers and so much more. Deride, ridicule, and ultimately destroy any feelings of patriotism or loyalty to our country among the youth. So this is one of their aims. Install in our youth an outlook of so-called internationalism and world-mindedness. This can easily be reconciled at a later date with the concept of a one-world communist empire. Remember, this is a well-known author, Edward Griffin, G. Edward Griffin. Indoctrinate the youth to embrace Marxism-socialism, not under that name, of course, so they use all kinds of fake names, even the thing New Age, etc., as the correct political and social viewpoint. And again, I watch a lot of videos. I even watch a lot of astrology videos. And I listen to those astrologers talking about Saturn moving into Aquarius and Saturn is supposed to be the planet representing Satan, and Aquarius is the new age we're entering, the age of Aquarius. So Satan is entering the age of Aquarius, that would be now, and these people, these astrologers, are saying that the whole system that we've operated on for the past 100 years or 1,000 years is outdated and no longer needed. And I point this out to my friend I watch these horoscope videos with. I say, there they say it again, they say it again, they say it again. We're going to have change. And a lot of pundits are talking about this world shutdown. It will never return to the world we knew even a month ago. And they're planning on bringing all this about. And it seems like the hammer, or I should say the vice, is being tightened a little bit more every day. Wouldn't it be wonderful, some people have hope, including me, that if they just reversed all of their activities today and say that the virus is dying up and the numbers have dropped to almost nothing and everybody can go back to work. But I don't think they came this far to do that. But maybe if they freak out and realize they're being exposed, you never know. So the 12th hour is here, or like seconds left. We can't take up arms and fight these people. We can call people. We can send emails. We can alert everybody. We can send videos. You can look up Max Egan. Look up the new video by David Icke. And so many other people, Dane Wigington, Geoengineering Watch, Deborah Travers, and look up 5G and the dangers, and look up 5G and coronavirus. Look up those keywords, coronavirus and 5G. See the plethora of videos and experts telling you that 5G radiations, just like a microwave oven, agitates your blood cells, causing them to emit toxins. The toxins cause flu-like symptoms and respiratory problems and can kill you. Think about this. When you put a glass of water in a microwave, the water starts to bubble because the microwave radiations are agitating the water molecules. When they put these 60 megahertz cell phone tower transmission signals out, those transmission radiation microwave signals causes the water molecules in your body and the ones in the air around you to get agitated and altered and destroyed. So basically the oxygen around you can be destroyed, and in your body also, causing a quite distressful situation of respiratory breathing problems, even death. Think about it. Look it up. 5G microwave frequencies, and look up microwave operational frequencies and see that they're similar. Everybody's been making videos warning about this. All right, some more of the aims of the United Nations. Neutralize the youth against the religious influences of the home. So if you happen to be a God-fearing man or woman raising a couple children, telling them about God and your beliefs, I don't care if you're Baptist or Catholic or Islamic or whatever, they apparently are opposed to that from the United Nations, UNESCO. And all other concepts of rigid morality, which might interfere with the acceptance of the Marxism and communist doctrine. Wow. So morality, they're calling it rigid morality, and might interfere with the acceptance of the Marxism communist doctrine. So only thing that morality would interfere with would be anti-Christian philosophy, which is Satanism, because their commandments are the opposites, as Aleister Crowley told us. Their commandment is, do as thou wilt. The second commandment, according to Aleister Crowley, is referred to number 1 again, do as thou wilt. That means there is no moral 10 commandments. Killing, stealing, adultery. Nonsense. Do as thou wilt. Whatever you want to do. You were put on this earth to do what you want to do, not be interfered with or restricted by these crazy religious people. So they would have us believe. And a lot of young people are buying it. As former communist Joseph Kornfetter expressed it, UNESCO corresponds to the agitation and propaganda department of the Communist Party. So the UNESCO, the United Nations Education and Science Department, corresponds to the agitation and propaganda department of the Communist Party. The Communist Party claimed to be atheists and practiced satanic rituals. So they don't want to admit that they worship the devil, so they rather say they worship nothing, atheists. But in truth, if you see what's going on and you look at the Moloch and the Baal symbols and the satanic symbols and the Luciferic symbols and the TV programming, you know that they are Satanist and Luciferic people, which are derivatives of the fallen angels and other evil entities. So this department handles the strategy and method of getting at the public mind, young and old. You can't make this stuff up. The Senate Internal Security Subcommittee disclosed that Alger Hiss, H-I-S-S, and Harry Dexter White were the principal architects of the UNESCO, along with the communists from other countries. For instance, Ellen Wilkinson, who had been an open communist in England, was even elected to a city council position on the Communist Party ticket, who later called herself a socialist. So the communists, to sugarcoat the terminology, they call themselves socialist. Who made president of UNESCO's Preparatory Commission. Clement Attlee had made her British Minister of Education, and as the Senate Committee of the Judiciary stated, all right, let me continue reading here, at the very bottom here. What appears to be by far the worst danger spot from the standpoint of disloyalty and subversive activity among Americans employed by the internal organizations of UNESCO. Mr. Price, Greedy, former chairman of the International Organization's Employees Loyalty Board, expressed the opinion that there existed in UNESCO a clique of people who placed the interest of the communist and the communist ideology, atheism, Satanism, above any service to UNESCO and above their own country. So they're serving the devil. They're serving Lucifer. On August 2nd, 1953, Dr. Luther Evans, who was then the new director of UNESCO, inadvertently confirmed the above Senate report when he declared, get this, that the United States drive against communism, infiltration in UN groups was a factor threatening to destroy UNESCO. So the attitudes against communism in the United States was threatening to destroy UNESCO and their goals. So the United Nations, I was thinking about that today, and I need to do it. I need to go online and see the current website for the United Nations and see how big their hand is in this coronavirus and these new changes that are going to come about on the world. Apparently, if the riots break out or revolution breaks out or resistance from peoples break out and the stores run out of food and gas stations close and more deaths ensue, obviously chaos and anarchy will run rampant across the world behind me. And then there'll be declarations that people need to surrender their weapons, and everybody will be required to take a vaccine. And apparently, according to some of these videos I'm watching, something called an RN code in our DNA will be injected into us with these vaccines. And what it will allow, what they inject into us, is turn us into programmable automatons, like robots, via the 5G digital transmission signals. So they need to get that stuff in us. For the past 10 plus years, they've been putting the heavy metals and other stuff into the sky. So we are already saturated with the heavy metals, which makes us more susceptible to the RF transmissions. But apparently a key component is some kind of programmable rNDNA that they need to get in us so that it can be triggered by the radio signals, making people sick, or maybe even just killing people, targeting people, whatever. That's what they're saying. I do know that the intense spraying of stuff into the sky since I woke up in 2005 has been very intense, and even at night with a full moon, you can see the thick white plumes of stuff coming out of the planes. It's kind of hard to photograph with your camera. Back to this book here. The following item appeared in newspapers on September 25th, 1954. The article is speaking about the Institute of Pacific Relations, which, as previously mentioned, has been officially described as Soviet-dominated. The News Dispatch said, 2 problems confront the organization. One is that the work is set out to do is now being duplicated by the wealthier and better equipped United Nations, such as the United Nations Education, Science, and Culture Organization, UNESCO. So the Soviet expanding communist world, its work was being duplicated by the United Nations. And I believe they have been seriously at work here in the United States for the past 100 years, attacking the youth and the school system, and trying to get rid of morality, promoting the homosexual agenda and pansexual agenda, sex with anything, and people, gender identity, and all this other stuff that we have all seen. So apparently it's all clearly described here as the anti-morality, anti-Christian, anti-religious Islam, anti-religious Buddhism, Hinduism. If you read about these religions and the spiritual deities, you will see that most of them are similar. Even the shamans in Peru and American Indian shamans, the Hopis, taking these peyote and other drugs to communicate with the spiritual world to get solutions for people who are ill or other problems with the indigenous tribes all over the world. Even the indigenous people, Australia, the Aborigines. So these tribes all over the world, Africa, Europe, China, Austria, America, South America, Eskimos, they have been communicating with the spiritual world, getting direction all along. And so their big religions are the same thing, communicating with the spiritual world, whether you want to call it Archangel Michael, Gabriel, or other entities. All right, back to this stuff here. In its own literature and periodicals, UNESCO makes its position clear. The Communist Guardian of Melbourne, England, in its May 28, 1959 issue, recommended the UNESCO Courier to its readers as a monthly magazine deserving a wide distribution. So the Communist Guardian is recommending the UNESCO Courier to the communist people. The Courier is so blatant in its communist propaganda that even the most unobserving reader can scarcely miss it. G. Edward Griffin. He's got a lot of videos on YouTube, interviews with many people, maybe some of his own videos, but a very smart man. You can take this information to the bank. I'm reading from this book here, and go watch my video. If I haven't published it, I will publish it right away. Series 55 in my series, Freemasonry and Satanism, The Creature from Jekyll Island, where they took over the U.S. control of the money supply in 1913, December 21st, an occultic holiday, the winter solstice. So it's all about the occult. It's all about Satanism, Luciferianism, secret societies, Gnosticism, and the Kabbalah Satanist. Just saying, that's my synopsis of the whole thing after all these years of research. You don't have to look very hard. Once you know the answer, looking up this material is a lot easier, and verifying everything I'm saying. All right, I'll read a little more and I'll end this video and remind you again where you can find this free PDF book. Go on used book sites and maybe try to find the actual book. I did do a search and they seem kind of expensive to me, so I just printed one out. As we have pointed out several times, not all the people who are advancing the cause of the United Nations and its specialized agencies are doing so with malice aforethought. As a matter of fact, there are relatively few who are. So most of the people in the UN are probably well-intended people. But wait a minute. What do these evil people really do? It has always been a pattern of successful communist operation. That would be atheist, Satanist. Got to get your words straight. When you hear communist, you're talking about Satanist and atheist. Communist operation to have unsuspecting idealists, so they want to reel in well-intended people to do most of the work, while the communists stay in the background, pulling the strings and issuing the directives. And I do know that a lot of the Kabbalah Jewish types in the past 1,000, 2,000 years have always worked behind the scenes as advisors to kings and queens and other elites, calling them magi, magicians. Don't forget that series, J.R. Tolkien, the Hobbit trilogies. And you have those evil wizards behind the scenes advising the king. That's what these people are. With the dark force of Star Wars. Consequently, many good people are victimized into lending their time, their reputations, and their money. Unfortunately, once a person has done this, he gradually acquires a vested interest in his own era, and even though he finds more and more aspects of the United Nations which run counter to his sensibilities, he tends to brush them aside rather than swallow his pride and admit he made an original mistake in judgment. Most humans are like that, but occasionally there is an exception. So a lot of people are on the inside. If you told them that it was an evil organization and they worked there, they would get quite angry and say, I'm not evil. But if they really took a hard look at some of the things they're doing and enforcing and what their bosses are doing with all this death and economic destruction all over the world, they would probably have a different change of attitude if they could learn the truth. Maybe some of them will watch a video like this. And this includes military leaders and people working for the CIA, FBI, police departments, Federal Reserve and tax collectors and all these groups. Please, if the people on the inside, if some of you don't have the guts to stand up and wake up and say no to your masters, you're going to lose your souls. It'd be better to wake up and tell those people no and be shot on the spot and go to heaven than to continue to aid and abet them in their satanic evil activities on planning to depopulate the planet and enslave the rest of the people. And it's all in these books that I've been going over. There's no mistake. There's no reason to shut down the whole planet for some influenza, which in previous years there have been outbreaks and many more people have died. Why in this case are they doing what they're doing? Because it's time for them to pull the trigger and bring about this global world order and depopulate the planet that they talk about so much, and so much material I've gone over. And get rid of the Christian and other religious attitudes of people all over the world. It is a satanic thing with the Epstein and many other of these cases, the Franklin cover-up, Aleister Crowley, and so much more exposed. You can go on the internet and look into it, and it's actually horrifying. I don't blame people for not wanting to come to grips with this and deal with it. I understand, but we have to. So here's one guy who got involved and woke up. Mr. John Larson was an active, respected, and well-known citizen in his community, had been invited by the State Department to become a member in the United Nations National Commission for UNESCO. Like most Americans, he considered this to be an honor. And felt that it was his duty to accept, which he did. He soon discovered, however, that he had been invited solely for the prestige that his name would add to the commission. He was expected to be satisfied with the role of a yes man for all the decisions of the full-time staff and senior members of the commission. He expressed a desire to participate in UNESCO planning sessions, and he was theoretically allowed to do three-quarter volunteering to travel at his own expense. But he was not advised of the meetings, so they were obviously keeping him out of the inside decisions. He tried to make his voice felt through correspondence and personal visits with the commission's secretariat. He was ignored, as were his recommendations. Finally, he resigned in protest, and here's what Mr. Lawson revealed. Now, I'm telling people, I make these videos, and you're learning what I'm learning. We have decisions to make. We have actions to take. We have phone calls to make. We can forward videos. We can do something, and it matters. Or we can just watch everything around us collapse and get worse and worse and worse and worse every day, until later on we will wish we spoke up when we had a chance. All right, so Mr. Larson resigned. Here's what he says. With respect to UNESCO's literature, it has very little substance, and what little it does have appears to be overtly and covertly to be slanted away from the spiritual and political beliefs and traditions of the United States of America towards the sterile conceptions of a nebulous one-world government or federation which is to be built upon atheist foundations. So I don't make this stuff up. We know what they want, if we want to admit it. I found grave errors of omission and distortions of perspective with respect to historical trends and events and to the growth and development of certain ideas. So they're distorting history and painting the rewriting of history in their philosophy to what they want to do, demonizing morality, etc. For these reasons, it is important to analyze what UNESCO does not present and proclaim, as well as what it does present and proclaim, in order to give an understanding of what its aims are. Peoples today are interested in achieving some sort of peaceful solution to the conflicts present in the world. And that's true. We would all like the world to be in peace. But apparently the elites who control our world will not allow it to be at peace for even a moment. We continually to have these events. Boom, boom, gun shooting, bombings, nasty stuff in the news, Democrats attacking Republicans, Republicans attacking Democrats. Just the news is just badgering us every day, every week, every month, every year, and it does take its toll on our physical and spiritual health. People get depressed. Some people commit suicide. And a lot of people in the army who have killed people have committed suicide. It's an alarming problem. They're worried about the economic collapse of the world. They're saying there could be a lot of suicides. The question is, on what foundation will the edifice of peace be built? UNESCO claims to supply this foundation. But when its claims are investigated, they are found to be empty, as well as a convenient cover for its real activities. The foundations of UNESCO are atheistic and materialistic. For it, man is the highest product of nature rather than one created. So they want to create the idea of man being God, not God, in the image of the likeness of God. This view of God and man dictates UNESCO's methods and can be seen in them. Rather than being genuinely concerned with the intellectual and moral development of man through education, UNESCO makes cynical use of those who it professes to be serving and helping. So they're cynical of the decent people, rather than assisting people to grow and accept responsibilities. UNESCO preys upon those with whom it comes in contact and is more than glad to assume covertly and overtly all responsibilities. So I could go on and on and on, but at some point I think I've delivered the message. You can go on archive.org, you can go on used book sites, you can go find, and there's probably other places, you can go find G. Edward Griffin's book. PDF free online, archive.org is where I got this. Or you can look up The Fearful Master in PDF, maybe find it in another location. And it tells all, a couple of 100 pages. I've done just little justice to this book. I've been reading some other stuff about the UN's activity over there in the Congo, clearly kicking out all of the people from Denmark, Belgium, and bringing in the communists and slaughtering the citizens, with the United Nations supporting the communist effort in the Congo, Africa, and inhibiting any activities by decent peoples for a normalized American way of life where they have factories and people going to work, etc. So apparently the elite are after the resources in Africa. Tons of resources. So you can understand why they would probably have spent the last 100 years using Ebola and other means, AIDS, killing off the citizens. There's a lot of gold in them there hills and other resources and land. So just like they did in South America and Central America and are doing in the United States and all over Europe, bringing about the European Union, which was behind the scenes organized and controlled somewhat by the British, who strangely enough are the ones who backed out of the EU conveniently prior to this coronavirus situation and world shutdown. You think that was just a convenient thing they did? Or was it planned? Did they know something about the future? And apparently, there's quite a bit of information out there that all of this insanity with the world shutdown and the coronavirus was known in advance. In 2017, there's a video with all the patents by the Bill Gates family and the Department of Defense and other organization making these patents on coronaviruses and the vaccinations. So, and websites that were built that are quite complex. I've shown one of those here in a video not too long ago, that this stuff was all planned. They knew what they were doing. They know what they're doing. They know what they want. And apparently they have to bring the world down. And I hope the whole thing gets reversed and we go back to normal today or tomorrow. But it doesn't look like that's what they're going to do. But you also have to remember, I'm not promoting fear. I'm just sharing the truth. And I believe the truth shall set us free. And we are spiritual beings. A lot of this is prophesied in the Bible and other religious prophecies and other religions. And so it has to happen, apparently. The evil forces need to be giving enough rope, so-called, to hang themselves. And the rest of us, when we leave the planet, can go to heaven into a wonderful reality. And if reincarnation is a reality, we will be in better places in the future versus joining with the dark side, the atheist and the Satanist, which is certainly, if God is the God that I think it is, that world is, the God world, the spiritual world, it won't bode well for the evil people, of course. Anyways, thanks for watching my video. And again, it's a conversation I think we need to be having. And maybe some people don't agree with everything I think and I say, but at least it's a conversation. It's a starting point, and people need to wake up and realize we have an influenza situation where the whole world is being shut down, and it's going to be a total and complete economic collapse if it's allowed to continue to be shut down. And we know what they want. I've got the books. I've been making the videos. We know who's behind it all. Satanists, atheists, communists, Zionists, Kabbalists, witchcraft. Thanks for watching my video. Rick Miracle reporting. Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle. Me. In my series Freemasonry and Satanism. And this will be series 281, part 3. So I've been going over these Phoenix Journal books. 139. The other one I made a video on the other day. 162. Whole book on depopulation. So in the Phoenix Journals, there are 2 categories that I will mention. Here's the website. You can see the website, contactnews10.com, the Phoenix Archives, the Phoenix Journals, the index there. So the Contact was a newspaper for 10 years during the 90s, and they took selected articles out of those newspapers and created the Phoenix Journals. And the 2 categories I'm talking about is one category, the published Phoenix Journals that you can go buy. Death Rattle of Freedom, The Plan 2000. The Scientific Definition of God, The Cosmic Order of the Universe. Tracking Down the Killer and Other Forms of Murder. So, 120 of these published books. You can see what it looks like. I wrote the numbers on. And 125 that were not published because they were banned, they were censored. It was legislation, lawsuits, threats. And so you can go on the 4winds10.com and Phoenix Journal websites and get the banned or the unpublished Phoenix Journals. and get the ones on that were published, also free PDF, or you can find them at used book sites. So there were 125 that were published, 120, and 125 that were unpublished. And I've been reading them. I read this one here in its entirety. And back towards the rear of the book, 107, there's this particular page I want to share. Because a lot of people don't know what the truth is. And the truth of the matter is the truth has been revised. History has been rewritten. History has been suppressed. They do not want the truth to be out there. And this is April 6th, the year 2020. And many of us are aware that the whole country is in lockdown. And it's a complicated issue because it appears that the coronavirus was just one of those instances where you don't let a good crisis go to waste. So when the crisis occurred in China, the powers that be, apparently some elite, in my opinion, sinister people, said we can seize this opportunity and categorize all viruses as a coronavirus, COVID-19 COVID virus, when in reality the COVID virus occurs every year. I guess they say there are different strains of it. 2017, the laws restricting experimentation and development to enhance the influenza viruses to be more deadly was reversed. And for whatever reason, the government decided that the huge corporations that are into that kind of research and development into biological weapons, that they could be allowed to continue developing and enhancing the flu virus, influenza virus, and other pathogens that are detrimental to human health. So they made it legal again in 2017. And apparently there are patents out there, there are videos on YouTube and websites and web pages where Bill Gates and DARPA and other organizations use their money for the development of those enhanced flu viruses, and to create also the vaccines, which was all patented from 2017, 18, 19, and 20. And of course here today we have the governments of the world shutting down the whole world. How could that happen? I think President Donald Trump was bragging on a press release yesterday, or a speech, that there was 122 nations who had jumped on board to shut down their countries and put everybody in essence under a slight house arrest, closing businesses and no traveling, etc. Anyways, he mentioned it went from 122 to 180. So all over the world, the governments, the presidents, the leaders are jumping on board and to shut down their countries and governments and small businesses and everything else. Strangely enough, on NPR radio today, they announced that North Carolina had revised its numbers of potential victims of the coronavirus, and the number was going way down. So it would be interesting if all of a sudden, out of nowhere, these countries all over the world said, thanks to social distancing and our actions, we were able to arrest this situation and the threat is over. And some people would say, well, that would be wonderful. But it might go the other way. They just might continue to step it up, and the world goes down the dark path into the global world order that is pursued. And there have been some elite people who have said this clearly. we will have our one world order, either peacefully or by violence and threat. So if they can just slowly do it, they will do it. And we know that they have been doing it, bringing us this anti-morality, Christian, and other religion philosophy. And I say that because I don't want people to think that I'm only pro-Christian. If I was born in Iraq, I would probably be a strong Muslim Islamist. If I was born in China, I might very well be a Buddhist. If I was born in India, a Hindu. If I was born in Iran, Zoroastrianism. If I was born in Peru, I would believe the previous religious teachings of the natives. Alaska, Australia, the Aborigines. So you get the point. We are a product of where we were born and raised and the teachings, and some people were raised staunch Christian religions, and other more looser ones, Roman Catholic or Baptist or Protestant or Methodist or Lutheran. And so there's a lot of that, and of course a lot of the New Age cults out there, Scientology and Ron Hubbard's information, and so much more. Apparently, one of the big religions today is science has become the religion of the people who control our planet, and they want to stay away from the spiritual aspect and just give us the facts and statistics that they create. And they know full well that the spiritual world exists, but that doesn't bode well for them to have us believe that if they want to control us like a slave. So with all that said, in these Phoenix journals, you can get a plethora of information, all free PDF, or you can go on used book sites and find the books like I do and try to start a collection, which probably will be valuable in the future. That's not why I do it, but I do notice some of the used books from the published Phoenix journals cost $600, $700, and $800. But you can get them all free on the Phoenix Journal websites. There's a couple different competing websites, apparently some kind of division in the politics of the people who organized all these Phoenix journals and newspapers during the 80s and 90s and the 2000 up to today. So I don't really try to pay too much attention to the ongoing battles going there, if there is still ongoing battles. But apparently they're not copyrighted books. It clearly says that repeatedly, that you can't copyright the truth. So what I want to talk about in this video is something that most of us are unaware of, and that would be the truth. Because we have been deceived intentionally into know what we know, because that's what they wanted us to know. And they continue to do it. And with the termination of my YouTube channel in 2019, July, and many other people's channels and Facebook accounts and Twitter accounts and websites and much more, historically in these books that I've been going over, there have been death threats, there have been murders, there have been destruction of the truth and research. And I want to talk about that because I believe it's going to continue. So in this book, page 107, I want to talk about something called the Mishpucker Terrorist Network. The Mishpucker Terrorist Network. So I was trying to figure out what the word Mishpucker means. Well, I'll show it to you here. Mishpucker Terrorist Network. Mishpucker. So apparently what it means, it's the puppets and stooges and the people who bring us all the deception, posing as our leaders are good people, but apparently they are working with and for the people pursuing a global world order, which is anti-Christian and pro-atheist and pro-Satanist, communist, Zionist, Kabbalist, Moloch, demon god, Baal, B-A-A-L, pro-God. So it's part of the evil forces who are rewriting world history. So let's talk about some of the efforts to erase the history and bring us a new history, the destruction of research organizations. And I'm talking about people like encyclopedias, dictionaries, Wikipedia, you know, people who were legitimately doing things, professors of history and stuff like that. People get these inclinations or pursue these things, maybe to get a further education or their PhD or to write a book. And that's why I do book reviews on all these issues, because when I was looking into this research, when I woke up in 2005, every time I started looking into a topic, I clearly found that there were books out there. And I decided it wasn't necessary and it would be required for a man to spend 20, 30, 40 years of research to be able to write some of the books that are written. And, you know, I only have one lifetime, and I was already an older man. I think I turned about 50 years old in 2005. I don't think. I turned 50 years old 15 years ago. And so I decided after reading books that I wasn't going to try to discover a truth and write a book or do tours and lectures and stuff like that. That what needed to be done, and that somebody needed to do, is to go find these books and reintroduce them to people, because the work, hundreds and hundreds of years of work have gone into all these books. And this is series 281, part 3. And I did do the 282, part 1, The Fearful Master by G. Edward Griffin, this morning. So this is in the afternoon, Monday, March 6, 2020. And I want to talk about efforts by these mishpucker terrorist networks, these people who are all over the world, who are trying to hide the truth and recreate or redesign we humans and society, and for the worse, I suspect, to an enslaved society and a elite society who controls everything. So let me read from page 107. Firebombing arson attack. And again, I had told you where to go find these, free PDF, and you can get it. And I would go to these websites because this information is likely to disappear eventually. There was even one person discussing that around Easter holiday, which is, I guess, this coming weekend, that there's going to be a 3-day blackout on the internet. So I know a lot of videos are popping up right now exposing a lot of truths that apparently the powers that be that have shut down the whole world, the truths they don't want out there. So I suspect the only thing they can do is to shut down the whole internet and have a blackout. And of course, in the middle of the night, go round up people who are trying to get the truth out. That's how serious the effort is, I believe. So let me tell you about a situation here in 1984. This terror campaign culminated in a devastating arson attack on the Institute's offices and warehouse in Torrance on July 4th, 1984. The 209th anniversary of American independence. Damage in the attack carried out in the early morning hours of the 4th, July 4th. Imagine that. The anniversary of American independence. So on July 4th, of all days, they had an attack, arson attack on the office, and were burning things, and the damage was estimated at $400,000. That's back then in 1984, so it would probably be $1 million or $2 or $3 million now. Arsonists hit Institute for Historical Review office, Daily Breeze, Torrance, July 5th, 1984. So the arsonist hit the Institute for Historical Review. So you get an organization, you get people that are professors and other people, authors, and people who join the group who care about the truth. And they finance and they create and they work every day at the Institute for Historical Review. Because a lot of people are aware of revisionism, about the elite who control our world, trying to rewrite history and hide certain history, deceive we the people from the truth. In a special edition of the Institute of Historical Review newsletter, August 1984, the IHR director, Thomas Marcellus, summed up. Let me read this. As a physical entity, the Institute for Historical Review has virtually ceased to exist. 90% of our book and tape inventory, the largest collection of revisionist historical literature to be found anywhere, has been wiped out. Every last piece of office equipment and machinery, including desks, chairs, files, and shelves, laid in charred heaps of useless twisted scrap. Manuscripts, documents, artwork, galleys, film negatives, products of more than 6 long years of a tough, dedicated effort to bring suppressed historical data to people the world over, no longer exist. Tens of thousands of books, estimated at over 300,000 in value, are gone. More than 2,500 square feet of space that was once the world's most controversial publisher lies blackened in chaos and total ruin. So you suppose the people who want to hide the truth are serious? You know why in 2019 there was a serious effort to shut down YouTube accounts, Facebook accounts, Twitter accounts, websites, shut up people, arresting Assange from Wikipedia and other people. So here we go. 2 days later, the JDL, the Jewish Defense League, leader Ivan Rubin showed up at the site of the gutted IHR office, Historical Review office, to publicly praise the arson attack. The JDL, the Jewish Defense League, he declared, wholeheartedly applauds the recent devastation of the offices of the Institute for Historical Review. So is it anti-Semitism for me to mention this? So in bold letters here, apparently the person editing or reviewing this article says, I wonder what would happen to any citizen, USA, who would say anything remotely resembling this statement outside a place that so much as breathed opposition against the Jew. So if I went out in front of a Jewish synagogue that had been arsoned, attacked, defaced, and destroyed, and I were out there saying, oh, this is a great thing, they destroyed the Jewish church, of obviously I would be in serious trouble. But apparently, the Jewish Defense League and those Jewish people can say these evil things about us, but people can't say evil things about them. They can say and deceive us on YouTube accounts, but we can't say the truth about the deception, or we get censored, and in many cases, even worse, like William Cooper and others, you get murdered in your own driveway. Or like President John Kennedy, who said he was going to expose these peoples. He was, of course, had the back of his head blown off, and many others. I could go on and on. That's another whole conversation, just trying to catalog all the people who have been imprisoned and murdered to keep the truth suppressed. Do you see the control gained over you, the people, that allows such as this to happen, and much more with blessings? And remember, in the series 282, the video I just made, it seems obvious to me, and I already knew a lot of the information, but the United Nations, and probably, of course, the Pentagon, and the people in the White House, and the Congress, and House of Representatives, and the people who control the school system, the federal communication system, Mr. Wheeler, who said there will be no research on 5G transmission radiation because we're going to get ours installed before anybody else. And apparently they were doing that in Australia and China and places all over the world. And apparently a lot of people are now saying some of the detrimental effects of those microwave transmissions is that they cause the human body, the cells in our body, to release toxins into our body, which of course causes a virus, influenza, flu-like symptoms, and even death with our respiratory system. So apparently the powers that be, like Mr. Wheeler of the FCC, they know that these things are dangerous, but they have an agenda. Back to this article in this Phoenix Journal unpublished banned book that you can find free on the Phoenix Journal website or used books on used bookstores. And I realize when I'm directing people to these different sources of materials that they could get consumed and not be watching my videos, which is fine for me. I just want people worldwide to wake up, because it is my world I'm trying to save also. It would behoove me if people would wake up, and the evil people, if you want to call them people, demonic, mentally possessed, insane people, before they wind up taking complete control of the planet, if we could wake up, maybe we could save ourselves. Denying any personal responsibility himself, Rubin said the criminal attack had been carried out by a former JDL, Jewish Defense League activist, named Larry Winston. His real name is Joel Cohen, C-O-H-E-N. So if you see a lot of these people, Cohen, on YouTube videos, rabbis or other high-level Jewish people, Cohen means prince, by the way. I believe with all my heart that he, Winston Cohen, had something to do with this arson, Rubin declared. JDL applauds. Blaze at the Terrence Institute was in the Daily Breeze newspaper in Torrance, July 7th, 1984. So they even spoke to the newspaper, and they were praising the arson at the Institute for Historical Review. So much for free speech in America and Canada and the world. All right, so in the wake of the firebombing, the IHR started up again from a makeshift new office in Torrance. In 1985, Rubin announced a JDL campaign to force the IHR out of the city. So they reopened, and the Jewish Defense League wanted to shut down the Institute for Historical Review. I suppose we can't have the truth out there. All right. So apparently, Rubin announced a JDL campaign to force the IHR out of the city. In parentheses, it says the Nazi Holocaust doubters target of Jewish group was in the newspaper, the Los Angeles Times. So in the Los Angeles Times, the title of the press release in the newspaper was the Nazi Holocaust doubters target of Jewish group. So in bold letters, the commenter says, obviously, hate crimes are only valid if against the so-called Jews. Aren't bombings and burnings and threats and terrorism against the law of state and nation? What is the matter with you citizens? I just witnessed something at the Simpson trial, O.J. Simpson, that was interesting. Marcia Clark stood screaming at the judge who had just inferred that he might rule against the prosecution on some point of injustice. She waved her hands and was all but out of control. When the judge calmed her down and asked Mr. Cochran to make his statement, he began by saying he wasn't going to get hysterical or yell at the judge or anything, but he surely had something to say. So what's his point on this? Now there was an interruption while Mrs. Clark espoused her abuse from the sexist statement from the opposing attorney. Man's life rests in the balance of this court. O.J. Simpson. And this is the garbage that goes on day after day after day. And of course, Jewish Allred is busy making publicity trips with the OJ's children to cemeteries, death scenes, and the television circuits. What have you come to? These murders were as good as set up as I ever witnessed of a mishpacher, which apparently is a mafia-type terrorist murder set. So apparently, like many other murders, it was an occult satanic ritual that O.J. Simpson was set up. And apparently, with other recent murders by famous sports stars and singers like Prince and Michael Jackson and others, basketball recent star, apparently there's a lot of information out there about these people being part of these occult groups, and they like to murder them in public sight as part of a public satanic ritual. We can't have too many of these people rising up and being worshipped or idolized, apparently. So what is going to take to awaken you enough to disallow these things? Billions of dollars are being wasted while the elite mushpacher, the mafia-type people, take your nation to this new world order. So it gives us a little sample of what we're dealing with, like I said, the death of popular singers, actors, Robin Williams, and all these accusations of satanic rituals, even in the Simpson cartoon. It just goes on and on. Although no one was ever arrested in connection with the 1984 firebombing, the sophisticated nature of the attack suggests that it could have been the work of trained operatives of a foreign governmental agency. Apart from the local news coverage, American newspapers and television reported almost nothing about this act of criminal book burning. The skewed media treatment moved noted journalist Alexander Cockburn to observe in the books of the liberal weekly, the magazine The Nation. A. Cochran wrote an article, Beat the Devil, The Nation, March 20th, 1989, page 366. The outfit in the United States that does publish material belittling generally accepted amounts of the Nazi extermination of the Jews is called the Institute for Historical Review. So I guess this is the author Cockburn in his book Beat the Devil, and this is one of the quotes from the book. I don't recall much fuss when its office in Torrance, California was firebombed on July 1984. Perhaps this is what the mailer meant by sophistication in handling such heterodox opinion. So I guess it's sophisticated for the elite-controlled newspapers to hide the truth and not publicize things that would alarm any citizen. You take something like the Institute for Historical Review, doing research by well-educated men and women, and the truth goes against the grain of those who would bring us this new Zionist, communist, global world order and the destruction of the way we society is. At the same time, though, a few prominent voices courageously spoke out against the attack. American historian John Tolan, who received the Pulitzer Prize for general nonfiction in his 1971 for his book The Rising Sun, wrote to the IHR, so Pulitzer Prize author, wrote to the Institute for Historical Review. The statements of Tolan and Irving appeared in the IRH newsletter, October 1984, page 1. So famous authors are writing to the Institute for Historical Review about the incident of the destruction of its books and equipment. When I learned of the torching of the office warehouse for the Institute of Historical Review, I was shocked. When I heard that no condemnation of this act of terrorism on television, and read no protest in the editorial pages of our leading newspapers or from the halls of academia, I was dismayed and incensed. I call on all true believers in democracy to join me in a public denunciation of the recent burning of books in Torrance, California. British historian David Irving, I-R-V-I-N-G, author of numerous acclaimed best-selling works of history, declared, "I was deeply shocked to hear of the firebomb attack on your premises." All right, so we got some more of these highlighted comments here. So the comments say, well, you will note that this bunch likes bombs, especially incineration type of devastation. They have a reason for this. It is called holocausting and apocalypsing. It is an old traditional method of the Jews as far back as history begins. I didn't write this, but holocausting. I wonder how many of you realize that Vincent Foster, Clinton's friend, had written a note in which he said the FBI had deceived Janet Reno. That, readers, is part of what took out Vince Foster. He knew the deception and the full intent of burning the Davidian compound in Waco, Texas. So apparently, the Davidian compound, I learned so much reading from these books and many other books. And if I didn't read so many books, I wouldn't have the confidence I have now to believe what I'm reading. But I've read so many books that when I read more books from other authors, other sources, I am getting a confident general idea of what has happened historically, what is happening historically, and what is likely to happen in the future. I mean, as far as the evil forces go, trying to bring us Zionist communism, satanic Kabbalism, and anti-Christian philosophy and society, they put it in their own words. The people are rather stupid. I think Mr. Rothschild's mother said, if my son didn't want any wars, there wouldn't be any wars. And I believe it was Rockefeller who said, we will have the New World Order peacefully or through violence, destruction. So if they can get everybody to just go along and fall into the global world order with a good handful of population reduction, billions of people dying, and everybody that survives winds up being slaves to these elite who do all these things I continue to read about. So Vince Foster was found in his car, if I remember correctly, shot, and apparently he knew the deception and the full intent of the burning of the Davidian compound in Waco, who apparently Janet Reno was in charge of, and apparently she was deceived. There were some things beyond his crooked ability to accept, and was sure the records was going to be disclosed. So apparently Vince Foster was working for the Clintons as a lawyer and knew about all the criminal activities. And so whether he committed suicide or he was taken out. So later you have to take out the entire Oklahoma City Federal Building. So apparently when the helicopters left the roof of the Davidian compound in Waco, people eyewitnessed them carrying boxes of stuff from the facilities, and it was a lot of detrimental records about the Clintons, who apparently were seriously into drug trafficking and other things. And those records were taken to the Oklahoma City Federal Building, which was bombed. So you can see the chain of events here. The destruction of the historical review, the destruction of the David compound in Waco, the destruction of the Oklahoma City building, and you start connecting the dots, the death of Vince Foster, and so much more information. I've read many books and resources on these topics, and I continue to be astonished at how much information is out there. And the government, obviously, the CIA, FBI, they're not stupid. They know this stuff. Politicians and leaders, but they're working with the evil forces, and they do get caught in these satanic rituals and sexual situations and child sex and etc. And it's so crazy. A lot of famous people, including a couple presidents, are in pictures with Mr. Epstein, and apparently have verified their trips to his island, which was for only one thing, apparently sex with children, and even apparently killing children. Snuff films, they had sex with the children and then killed them during the sexual event and videoed it, and were making the videos available to the elite who control our world. Some very sick, mentally disturbed people. But back to the book. So later you have to take out the entire Oklahoma City Federal Building to hide the evidence stashed there, don't you? One thing always leads to another, and usually worse action. Okay, next paragraph. You can see all that's in writing here. I don't make it up. Pause your computer and read it. It's in these books you can get free. Still, but I'm not so sure how long that'll last. The Jewish Defense League harassment of the Institute for Historical Review Conference. So they're having a conference. In mid-February 1989, 5 years later, after destroying their facility, the Jewish Defense League intimidation brought on the cancellation of a 3-day Institute for Historical Review conference at the 2 hotel sites in Southern California. Arrangements have been made months in advance to hold the 9th IRH conference at the Red Lion Inn Hotel in Costa Mesa. Several days before it was to begin, the hotel received the first of a barrage of telephone threats, warning that if it is permitted, the IHR gathering to take place as scheduled, there would be large disruptive demonstrations in front of the hotel. It didn't take many such threats to persuade General Manager Russell Cox to cave into the Zionist group and to cancel the hotel's contract with the IHR. Cox then added insult to injury by permitting the JDL Jewish Defense League Chief Rubin to hold a news conference in the hotel lobby. In bold it says, read that again? So the hotel canceled the IHR, the Institute for Historical Reviews conference, but did allow the JDL, who made the threat, to have a news conference in the hotel lobby. So they can do these things to us, but we can't tell the truth about them, or you'll be accused of being a hater or an anti-Semite. And apparently they're trying to pass laws to make it illegal for anybody to tell these truths. But then again, we do have the First Amendment of free speech and free thought. So that law, if they make a law that you can't say these things, that law would be illegal. FYI. Any law that infringes on our Bill of Rights and Constitution is an illegal law. Arrangements were hastily made to relocate the IHR gathering to the nearby Holiday Inn Hotel. However, just hours before it was to commence, as the attendees were arriving, the Holiday Inn likewise canceled out, bowing to the JDL Jewish Defense League, threats similar to those made against the Red Lion Inn. Okay, highlighted notes again. Now, what do you suppose what would happen to a group of Germans doing the same thing to a meeting foisting off Schindler's List onto an unsuspecting public, requiring it to be shown in public schools? So none of us could make these kinds of threats about anybody else. We would be arrested right away and discriminated against and made called haters and anti-Semites. While the statements of the author of the book in the motion picture said it's a work of fiction, a fantasy made into a motion picture. So they make a movie like Schindler's List, and it's apparently a propaganda to deceive what we the people think. Then they turn about and make a picture about a womanizing and loose morals of your own Thomas Jefferson. And where is their objection? It is said, we don't have to stick to the truth. There is a movie which does not infer truth. So they can make a movie making Thomas Jefferson, one of the founding fathers of the United States, into a womanizer and loose morals. And they can also make videos deceiving us with Schindler's List. At this point, with the help of the former U.S. Congressman John Schmitz, IHR Director Tom Marcellus made emergency arrangements with Joe Bischoff, proprietor of the Old World Village Shopping Center in Huntington Beach, to hold the IHR conference, the Institute for Historical Review. Bischoff refused to bow to the JDL intimidation, including a demonstration on the site by a handful of sorry-looking placard-waving JDLs led by Rubin, who shouted insults at passerbyers. In spite of the disruption and some inconvenience for attendees, the 9th IHR conference proved one of the most successful and high-spirited ever. And the next highlight here is the JDL Thug Attack, Young Jewish Revisionist. Next page. So I'll take a moment and throw in my own 2 cents. And this is important about revisionism and intentional deception coming from the powers that be with tons of money to spend that they get from our own government. And that would be the Freemasonic lodges and the secret societies, the Illuminati, and apparently even the government intelligence agencies from Israel and Zionist elite and other mafia-type people. They spend a lot of money organizing some of these protests you and I see on the corners of our downtown areas. Even with the Women's March on Washington and a lot of the gay pride parades, you can see them carrying very expensive place cards, those signs with the words on them. And you can go online and find very complicated websites, even with instructions on where to stay and where to check in at. So a lot of this protest and a lot of these activities made public is all propaganda and a deception. It isn't homegrown from people's ideas thinking to go make a protest downtown this city or downtown that city. When these things occur, they usually occur all across the country at the same time. And even George Soros and others have been exposed, spending their millions and millions to orchestrate these things. And it's all intended to bring us this change in the paradigm that we live in, from a moral nation to an immoral nation where anything goes, atheism and Satanism, and even lawyers trying to lower the age for sexual relations. Instead of probably 17, maybe they want 15 or 13. We have some seriously, and you can look these things up on the computer, don't believe me. And again, the truth is dangerous in a time of treason and in a time of world revolution and the anti-Christian and anti-religion attack on peoples all over the world. Even down under Australia, it's horrific. Look up Pine Gap. Look up HARP transmitters, these 40-acre transmitters that can beam gigantic signals off of the ionosphere and down onto your city. There's one up here in Alaska. There's another one down here in Puerto Rico. There's another one up here in the Netherlands. There's another one over here. So you get it? It's a triangular thing. Excuse me. Boom, boom, boom. You can look at the maps on the internet, HARP transmitters, and it'll show you where they are. So they can literally beam this huge amounts of energy. And apparently these energies can give us a bath of pulses, boom, 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 on our cells. And it can have carrier signals of higher frequencies. So they can cause a lot of people to get bathed in these energies and not even know it. I can feel it sometimes when I don't know if you've ever heard it, but every now and then I hear this in my ear. And the other day I was working out in the garden and I felt this impact, like I was driving up a mountain, you know, where your ears pop, or you're on a plane going up. And I said, man, I just felt that. I was talking to my friend I was working in the garden with. I said, I've just been blasted. And I could hear the and apparently these things can harm us, and they're intended to harm us. There's a war on right now attacking humanity worldwide, and this economic destruction shutting down people's employment and businesses, in a lot of cases, may be non-recoverable. On January 22nd, 1992, revisionist activist David Cole was attacked by the JDL thugs at a meeting held at the University of California in Los Angeles. So you have a revisionist, somebody studying history, and he was attacked by the Jewish Defense Leagues. Before the meeting began, JDL leader Rubin first tried to push the youthful Cole down a flight of stairs. So they tried to push this man down a flight of stairs, a young man. The JDL hoodlums also harassed and pushed around meeting organizer Robert Morsery. After the meeting commenced, JDL punks tried to shoot down the speakers, and they threw food at Cole. Finally, a JDL Jewish Defense League thug assaulted Cole, who is Jewish, hitting him in the face and bloodying his nose. So Cole, a young man who is Jewish, who is a revisionist activist, trying to get the truth out, a Jewish man trying to get the truth out, is attacked by the Jewish Defense League. And I have to say, honestly, a lot of what I have learned about this deception and evil people controlling our world came from famous books written by Jewish people and speeches like Benjamin Friedman. Please go look on your computer for Benjamin Friedman's speech at the Waldorf Hotel. Look up John Kennedy, President John Kennedy's famous speech. There is a plethora of information out there to prove that everything that I'm saying is true. These evil mafia-type people are going to enslave the world and kill off a good portion of the population if they have their way. The Talmud was recorded on videotape by a camera crew of CBS television news program. So the JDL is assaulting the young Jewish man Cole, and it's caught on CBS television news program 48 Hours, as well as by news crews of two local Los Angeles television stations. Neither of the two local stations mentioned a word of the incident in their nightly news broadcast. So wait a minute, the JDL, the Jewish Defense League, is pushing this Jewish young man down the stairs, trying to, and all this other assaulting type things, bloodying his nose, hitting him in the face. But the newspapers, the television stations don't discuss any of it. If the situation were reversed and something similar happened to anybody that was Jewish or looked like it, then it would be all over the news. We all know this. But this young man was Jewish. Similarly, CBS officials decided not to air even a second of this outburst, not even a segment about the Holocaust revisionists that was part of the CBS television network's long-hour magazine format program, 48 Hours, broadcast of the February 26th, 1992. Network officials apparently decided that scenes of Zionist hooligans beating a young Jewish revisionist would not fit with the image of revisionism that CBS wanted to project to its many viewers. And again, this magazine here is 107 pages. There's 125 of these banned journals free on the Phoenix Journal website. 120 of them that are published you can find at used book sites, and free also PDF on the Phoenix Journal website. And also 10 years worth of the newspaper they were publishing, the Phoenix Research Project, from 1990 to 1999. For the first 2 years it was called The Liberator, and then they were suffering some attacks and lawsuit incidences, so they changed the name to the Contact newspaper. And it's all on the Phoenix Journal website for free PDF. And I highly encourage people to go to those websites. And it also says in plain English that the material is not copyrighted. Is a plethora of information, a ton of information. A person could spend the rest of their life there and compile some of that information and put some books together, do other research to verify everything. All right, finishing up this video. Violence in Europe. The murder of Francois Duprat. In France, Francesco Duprat, a gifted young historian, educator, and prolific writer, was murdered in 1978, thereby becoming the first person to be killed because of his support of Holocaust revisionism. Duprat had publicized the writings of former concentrate camp inmate Paul Rimziner, distributed a booklet called "Did 6 Million Really Die?" and had published a revisionist article of his own, "The Mystery of the Gas Chambers." Philip Rest Biography Dictionary of the Extreme Right since 1890. New York Simon & Schuster Publishing. I'll show you this here. The Journal of Historical Review, winter 1988 and 89. As a result of such activism, the 30-year-old teacher was assassinated. Wow, so they even kill people who try to get the truth out. 38-year-old school teacher assassinated on March 18, 1978, when the car he was driving was blown up by a bomb blast. His wife, who was with him, lost the use of her legs in the attack. A Jewish Remembrance Commando and a Jewish revolutionary group promptly claimed responsibility for the murder. Pause your computer and you can see all the sources there for the material. And the last chapter, last page there. Read that. I made a book review on Viktor Ostrowski's book, a former intelligence case officer of Mossad, Israel's spy and Secret Service agency, confirms this connection in his much-discussed book, By Way of Deception. Responsible for setting up Jewish defense groups called Frames, or Misgrarot, all over the world, now including some parts of the United States where anti-Semitism is regarded as a threat. So wherever they find that the truth is getting out, they set up these local hoodlums and even assassination people to prevent the truth from getting out. So you can see what's in these Phoenix journals. And if you connect the dots, and these people who control our reality, who resort to the destruction of the Institute for Historical Review, and the death and destruction and reputations destroyed of many people who were trying to get the truth out there, and all the propaganda in the newspapers, it does make you wonder and be concerned about these entities who are shutting down the whole world right now on March 6th, year 2020. It really calls into question, you know, are all these evil mafia-type organizations and banking systems and people who control our politicians and all this other stuff, are they bringing all this about to bring about the global world order? Do they really want to kill billions of people? I'd just like to have a conversation on these things, and if it is all true, we definitely need to wake up and say no to what they are doing. Vengeance and revenge and violence is not a choice. I don't believe in hate whatsoever, no matter what they do to us. We're to love one another and trust in God and the higher power. Thank you for watching my video. Rick Miracle reporting.